Sherry Heiberg, the archivist at Cloud Imperium Games, and I'm here with the first episode of the LoreMaker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a new segment about the lore and science behind each system and planet in our game. So now that we're here, let's get started. Our first system, and one of my personal favorites, is the Horus system. Which is a M-type main sequence star, also known as a red dwarf, with 3 planets, 2 asteroid belts, and 4 jump points. 2 going to Xi'an space and 2 going to UEE space. Now, Horus was discovered, whoops, there we go, let's go right back there. Horus was discovered in 2528 by a young explorer named Marie Sante. She ran away from home at a very young age, stealing a ship from her parents, called the Horus, which she later named the ship after. She explored for some time. It's rumored that she discovered the system when she was around 14 years old and spent the intervening years charting everything there, like these 2 planets, the asteroid belts, and this outer planet right here. When she first discovered the system, 2 of the jump points were as yet undiscovered. Those were the 2 ones that were going to Xi'an space. So as far as she knew at the time when she reported the system as being discovered to the UPE, it would be just a new system in regular UPE space without any political importance whatsoever, which was, of course, completely thrown out of whack in 2542 when she herself discovered the jump point to Rila. Which, where do we have that? Boop, 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 right here. This goes to a close-by Xi'an system. Well, it may as well just jump through it so we can see it. With this giant star and all these planets. And of course that made it immediately militarily important because this was during the Cold War, during the Messer era when the Xi'an and the humans were very calmly at each other's throats. The resulting kerfuffle from that discovery led the UPE to declare Horus a totally military quarantine system. And so the few settlers who were on the first planet, they just didn't really care. They said, fine, we won't fly around, we'll just stay here on our planet. But Marie Sante was very upset because the system was her baby. So she refused to evacuate and just took her ship into the outer reaches of the system and continued to explore, which led to an incident with the military. A Navy explorer, a Navy ship found her in the system and reported an unidentified ship and reported that to the UPE, which resulted in this military skirmish. No casualties or anything. But the incident was so obnoxious that they really wanted to pressure her to leave the system, and that's when they started to do that in earnest. So, duly pressured, in around 2545, Marie Sante vanished without a trace. She believed that the system had more secrets to discover, and she vowed that she would never share them with anybody. So who knows whether she did discover a new secret. The mystery of Marie Sante is something that draws tourists to the system, like people who are interested in unsolved mysteries, just like we are today. Marie Sante was right about one thing, though, that there was another jump point to Xi'an space, Kepha, which is right there, looking all valuable to the military, strategically valuable. Anyway, after the Cold War ended, the system that was once considered a really boring place for military ships to fly around and make sure no Xi'an were invading, became all of a sudden a really economically valuable system because it had these 2 jump points that were going straight to Xi'an space. Great for commercial interests. And so Serling, this first planet right here, which is only settled along the solar terminator. Let's talk about the star itself, Horus. This is an M-type main sequence star, which is popularly known as a red dwarf. You may have seen or heard of a show called Red Dwarf. These stars are interesting. They're some of the most common in the galaxy. They are the longest lived by far. I believe that we've never actually seen one die, which is an insane thing. They're billions and billions and billions of years old, and we've seen all kinds of other stars die, but never a red dwarf. When they first start out, they're often really unstable and have lots of flares, which is the situation in Pyro, just to have a little incidental piece of knowledge there. And the flares will go out like really, really far, and they'll scorch planets, and they'll make systems just totally uninhabitable and really hostile to any kind of person who wants to make a living there or explore there. But the star in Horus has long since settled its adolescent period, I guess. The flare star period tends to last around 1.2 billion years, and then they settle down into something really steady and really good for the possible development of life. They're cool. They tend to be about half the temperature of stars like our sun, which are G-type main sequence stars, yellow dwarfs. We really, really wanted more systems that had this type of star, since this star is so common, and we had tended to lean towards G and F type stars in the other systems. And so this was one of the earlier ones that we came up with that had this type of habitability model. The first planet in the system is Serling, and I'm sure that a lot of you picked up that it was named for Rod Serling, the host of the Twilight Zone, because it is only habitable along the twilight band of the planet. This was added to the game because we had recently discussed with a local scientist and read a little bit about these particular type of planets that circle very, very close to M-type stars, and they are in fact tidally locked to the planet. The animation so far doesn't reflect that, but it will in the future. That's one of the goals for making the star map more visually accurate to reflect the lore that we have in the game. Serling itself, it's locked around the equator, and so one side of the planet is just permanently facing the star, and it's warm, and it's got lots of driving winds, and there's a lot of storms, especially on the point that's closest to the star. There's storms constantly. And then on the other side of the planet is permanent night zone. It's a polar ice cap. There's really not anything that lives there. The abundant oceans on Serling, again, this is something that we will correct in the future visually, will make the habitable zone possible. Without the abundant oceans, it might just be this really weird planet that's baked on one side and ice on one side, and nothing would happen. But luckily for life, we have this one little strip of planet where people can live. The people who live on Serling, they tend to commute from the night to day side to simulate the night-day cycle that Serling totally lacks. And that they'll work on the day side and they'll sleep on the night side. This is just along the solar terminator, by the way. This isn't going to be, these people won't be stuck in storms forever on one side and ice forever on one side. It's generally, it's more temperate in the Meridian than anywhere else on the planet. A lot of people who are natives of Serling, who have been there for many, many generations, don't really care too much about going back and forth between the day and night cycle. They're used to living in this permanent sunset, which is pretty cool. Person, I think. There is a study going on at the University of Aten, which is located on Serling, that's kind of assessing the effects of what this cycle does to people, how it affects their mood, how it affects their productivity, how it affects their quality of life. Because the habitable zone of Serling is so narrow, it's got a pretty low population, and businesses that want to get a foothold in the system so that they can trade with the Xi'an more easily have kind of a tough time muscling their way in. Which brings us to the second planet in the system. Horus 2 has no name because it has no settlement. It is currently a desert planet. There's no water that we know of on it. But it is a viable terraforming candidate. It sits just at the edge of the green zone. And because of this, a lot of the businesses that want a foothold in Horus are really pushing the government to try to get this terraform so that they can settle in and open up trade relations with the Xi'an. It's a little bit more massive than a lot of small planets, which would give it a better chance of being terraformed since it's right on the edge of the green band. Now, zooming out, we can see the first asteroid belt. Both asteroid belts in the system are pretty sparse, which is honestly really common for a lot of asteroid belts. There are probably going to be some mining opportunities there in the future. Certainly mining opportunities that you can exploit to further trade relations with the Xi'an, for example, since they're right there. The system does see a good bit of Xi'an traffic sometimes. Whoops, I went all the way out again. All right, our last planet in the system is Horus 3, right over here. This planet is special. It's a super Jupiter. Super Jupiters are gas giants that are more massive than Jupiter. That's the definition of them. But this gas giant is about 4 times as massive as Jupiter. It is one of the most massive super Jupiters that are in our game, which can be very interesting in gameplay. Whee! It kind of sits on the outskirts of the system, being large, being in charge, being desolate, because there's no life there. But it could be a place to refuel, that kind of deal. So anyway, that's about it for Horus. I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes look at one of my favorite systems because of the cool science behind it. It's got a rare tidally logged habitable planet, it's got 4 jump points, and it's got a rare super Jupiter. So, got some neat science going on, good culture. Horus, yay. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I had a really good time talking about the system, and I hope to see you guys again. Thanks as always for being awesome people, for subscribing, and for making all this possible.